Hello and welcome to our program, Where God Weeps, a program where we talk about the situation of the suffering church around the world. Today we're going to be considering the country of Liberia, a small country of some 3 million lying on Africa's west coast. It is also one of Africa's oldest countries. Liberia was relatively calm until a military coup in 1980 provoked a civil war in 1989, which raged until 2003. Over 250,000 lives were lost. Liberians called it their World War III. Today, the country is in the process of reconciliation and reconstruction. And to tell us more about the situation of Catholics in Liberia, it's my very great privilege to welcome His Excellency Bishop Andrew J. Karnley, the Bishop of Cape Palmas, Liberia. Your Excellency, thank you for being with us here today in our program.
Thank you for having me, Mark.
Your Excellency, first to the good news. I've got some statistics here. I'd like to read them for you. So despite the difficult global environment in which we find ourselves today, Liberia's economy has expanded at an extraordinary rate of 6% during the last five years. Foreign investment has picked up over the same period. Much needed regulatory reforms have been undertaken in various sectors. And corporate tax rate has been reduced. It would seem that things are roses, things are moving in the right way. Can you tell us a little bit about this expansion, this extraordinary growth of the economy in Liberia today?
Yes, it is very much true that more positive things are now happening in Liberia since the end of the Civil War in 2003 and with the holding of elections in 2005 and of course last year in 2011 we had our second post-war elections. So the environment is very much conducive for business and the government has been able to put into place the necessary mechanism to attract investors, and of course the constructive engagements that the government has had with international organizations and business partners. All those things have encouraged people to come and do business in Liberia, and so more positive things are happening. And as one pontiff said, everything is possible when there is peace. So there are many possibilities now in Liberia because of the end of the war and with the advent of peace.
Maybe this isn't fair because of the fact that you've just come from a civil war, but at the same time Forbes magazine indicates that Liberia is the world's third poorest country, with 84% of the population living under the poverty line. How does this measure up with those who are benefiting so much from the present growth in the economy? Is there a wealth gap that's starting to occur? And what conclusions do we draw from the enormous poverty in Liberia at the moment?
It is very much true that Liberia is a poor country, but that should not be the case because Liberia is naturally endowed. And if in the past, the governments of the past had actually invested in the people and developed the country, I think Liberia would have been better off. But now the government is actually working on a program of poverty reduction. Yes, that's one of the priorities of the government, and it will take some time, before the ordinary person can really begin to feel, that something is being done, but government is actually putting into place the necessary mechanism that will enable people to really benefit, but that will take a long time, yes. So life is very challenging for the ordinary Liberian. Yes, the business people are gaining, but what the government is working on so that those benefits can filter out to the ordinary Liberian, especially through gainful employment, of course, through the development of the various communities.
Your Excellency, another area of concern, of course, is health The average life expectancy is apparently only 44 years, and this is an enormous challenge for a country. Can you tell us a little bit about health and the medical situation for Liberia?
Yes, health is a challenge in Liberia because, most people in rural Liberia especially do not have access to basic health services.
So there are no hospitals, no clinics? Or?
Yes, in many parts of rural Liberia. And if there are, they are poorly equipped, poorly staffed. Yes, so this has been a real challenge. People are dying, because of the lack of, basic health services and, diseases that could be prevented, like malaria and other diseases. People are suffering and dying. So there is the need actually for the government to invest into the health sector. Yes, since the incumbency of this government, some health facilities have been, built in rural areas, and there's the campaign to encourage health personnel to work in the rural areas. But I would say a lot has to be done to train more nurses, more doctors, and of course, not only to build health facilities, but also to equip them so that they can deliver adequate services. And if there are, referral hospitals in the different regions of the country, I think that would be a welcome development. I must mention that a very important development has taken place in one part of Liberia, in Nimba, where the Republic of China built a hospital and has been equipped. And that hospital is in Tapita in Nimba County, and it is being used as a referral hospital. But of course, in the outlying areas, there's the need to have clinics that are well staffed and well equipped. But another challenge is also the condition of the roads, for people to access, these facilities wherever they are built. So it's one thing to have a facility in one place. It's another challenge for people to actually move from one part of the region to the other. So there are many challenges, but health is a serious issue.
I want to come back to the role of the church, if you will, a little bit later.
Yes.
At the moment, I think it's important again that we put this into context. That is, Liberia has a little more than a decade ago come out of a civil war in which over 250,000 lives were lost and millions were internally displaced. And the impact of this war, not only on society, but on the hearts of the people. And before we get there, I want to ask you your experience of the war. You were in Liberia at that time, and how did the war impact you and your life personally?
Yes, the war impacted on me. First of all, the war disrupted my formation, for the priesthood, because at the time the war started, I was in my third year of philosophy in a major seminary in central Liberia in Bangabong County. And I remember that the town next to Banga came under attack, and we could actually hear the shelling. And this was like on Holy Saturday, and I recall that we had to rush with the Easter Vigil, and on Easter Sunday, we had Easter Sunday Mass very early, and we had to close up and vacate the seminary because the next town was under attack, and who knows, our town would be the next under attack. We could actually hear the shelling, we could see troops moving up, and internally displaced people coming down. It was a difficult and frightening situation. Yes, so we had to close up the seminary, and our bishops had to meet and make arrangements for us to move to another African country, Sierra Leone. They also had their own students studying with us in Liberia, so we relocated for our staff into Sierra Leone, and we used another facility that was made available. Then again, war started in Sierra Leone a year or so later, and
so you had to move again.
Yes. Then subsequently, I had to move to Ghana, where I
completed your studies.
Completed my studies. And I lost a brother in the war. Yes, I don't know where he's buried today. I was only told that he was killed, and my mother tried to ask for his body, and his body was never returned, and so.
I'm sorry. Your Excellency, how do you see the scars on the hearts of the people today after such a dramatic impact on their lives?
We Liberians carry the scars of war still, but thank God, with the advent of peace, those scars are beginning to heal gradually. It's a long healing process, I must admit. And with the various institutions of democracy coming into place, now we have a good government, I can say, though there are challenges that the government is faced with, those things are bringing some level of healing, I must say. And the setting up of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, when people came forward to tell their story, and those who were held who are presumed to be responsible for the war were asked to come before the commission to also answer. I think that brought some measure of healing. And I must admit that the trial of Charles Taylor in The Hague for what he's responsible for in Sierra Leone, and he has been convicted and sentenced, has brought some measure of healing in the hearts of Liberia. But what I would like to see happening in Liberia is that there are others who bear the greatest responsibility. I think these people should be held accountable. It's not just Charles Taylor. In fact, he was only held responsible for what he's accused of doing in Sierra Leone.
Not in Liberia.
Not Liberia. And he did not act alone. Okay, so I would love to see people, being held accountable, and of course, so that they can, so that justice can take its. So there is this tension, as I see it, between justice and reconciliation. We want reconciliation in Liberia, but do we want justice? So can reconciliation take place without justice? So there's that sort of debate.
That's a big challenge, because in fact, true reconciliation can only be understood if there is true justice.
Yes, exactly. So I can see that the current government is very slow, I must say, in taking that bold step, because some members of the government were also part of the warring faction. They gave support. And of course, some of them were mentioned in the findings of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Recommendations were made. So I can see that the findings or the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission are not really gaining priority. I must say, as we talk now, we don't hear much about it, but it is being said that the Independent Human Rights Commission will be responsible to implement these recommendations, but we are not hearing much. So I'm just wondering whether the whole process of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was an exercise in futility, or perhaps another government might take the issues up. I don't know, but I think the present government needs to do something about healing and reconciliation.
How a civil war is so terrible, because it pits neighbor against neighbor, and often family against family. And how do you reconcile after such an intimate war, if you will, which is a civil war?
I would say it's there that we need the grace of God, because it's not as easy as it may seem. I share with you my own story of my brother. It's something very difficult for myself and the family, and we only heard, that he was killed, but we don't even know exactly who did it. And there are those who know exactly who did what to their family members, and these people are around today. So I think it's something that we have to ask for the grace of God, first of all, as individuals and as a people and a nation. Yeah, it is there that I see the church really, playing a very important role.
This is the role of the church, to introduce the mercy of God into the picture.
Exactly. I would say it's there that the church comes in, because, the politicians may have played a part. The international community has been involved in the rebuilding process and that. But the international community, they have their limitations. They are experts in their own area. I would say the church, there we need to bring the message of the gospel. Okay, when Jesus died on the cross, he said, Father, forgive them. How? Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. How can we make that message of Christ from the cross relevant to ourselves? Yeah, I would say, there we have to find some meaning in the suffering and passion of Christ. How he could forgive those who brought so much suffering and pain upon him. Yeah.
The church, too, was not spared violence. Priests were assassinated, religious had to flee the country, churches were destroyed. How does the church rebuild after such violence enacted on its own body?
The church suffered a lot, as you mentioned. Yes, I mean, nuns were killed, priests were killed, catechists. I mean, even a seminarian, of course. Many good lay people in the church lost their lives. Yeah, and that impacted on the church. And of course, the whole war made many missionaries to leave the country. Some cannot return because of age. But the church has been able, thank God, with local vocations. And of course, we are still having missionaries in Liberia. First of all, we have been working on building, rebuilding, revitalizing the pastoral and spiritual programs of the church. And many communities of faith have been revitalized. People are beginning to take ownership and responsibility of the local church. So there are many communities that are becoming vibrant, and the church is beginning to grow. But of course, the infrastructures of the church, I mean, the church is the people, okay? But also the infrastructures of the church, were badly, damaged and vandalized. And we have been in the process of rebuilding. And thank God with support from Church in Need, yes. I mean, our pastoral programs, I mean, training our catechists, I mean, rebuilding our seminary. Yes, we have been working in that direction, but there are still challenges. The process has begun and it is ongoing, yes.
Your Excellency, of course, one dramatic element and one very painful element was the use of child soldiers. The UN estimates that over 15,000 children used in the war as child soldiers. What is your understanding, and how does healing come about also for these children, that they start to reintegrate into society?
The use of child soldiers in our Civil War was a very, very sad development, because these children were prematurely introduced into the worst things.
What do we understand by child soldier? What age are we talking about?
Well, these children, we can take them from the age of 8 to 12, 15 years.
And a gun was simply put in their hand?
Yes.
And drugs?
They were drugged, yeah, and they were, indoctrinated. They were made to follow the command of their commanders, and they were made to do the worst things.
I think,
and even
without dwelling too much, but I think it's important to understand the evil that was involved. The children were often told to kill directly, don't know whether necessarily a family member but a village member, for example, so that the first step of this child on his way to his corruption, if you will, was started.
Yes, I mean, their capacity to think and reason well was reduced because they were drugged, they were indoctrinated, I mean, they were given alcohol, and they were made to watch, violent movies and all that, and they were made, just as you mentioned, to kill. Yeah, they were forced to kill. It was a rite of initiation, yes. And there is a classic case of a young man, of one of these child soldiers, who killed his mother, in Bangabong County during the time of Charles Taylor. His mother had gone to speak to him to, leave the militia and return to school. And he got angry and turned his gun on his mother. He killed his mother, and he wanted to kill the other members of the family, but they ran away. And nothing was done to him. He was relocated into another command post. Yeah, that was a classic case, but many cases. And these children are with us today in Liberia, and many of them are without education, without basic skills. I mean...
Are they on the streets?
Yes, some of them are on the streets, yeah. I mean, some of them are involved in armed robbery. Some of them are hooked on drugs, yeah. Some have been able to move on in a positive way, but there are a large number of them who are still stuck.
And what can the church do for these children? Is there a program for them? And if so, what can you do for someone who has encountered such violence and such evil in their lives? How do you free them of this?
Yes, in the early days during the disarmament, for example, through a program that was run by the Salesians of Don Bosco, they had, a program for child soldiers, so they were able to get involved so that they could disarm, but that program is being reviewed and revitalized. Now, in the Diocese of Palmas, there is a program called Marginalized Youth Program. It's a skills building program, also a program for leadership. So these marginalized children are being brought, they live with their families, but they come in certain hours of the day for skills training and also for talks on leadership and to help them change their mind and attitude. So, yes, but a lot needs to be done. This program is just in one locality, but it needs to be extended and expanded. I would say the youth apostolate of the church in Liberia has to be revitalized and strengthened and supported. And this is where we can make a contribution. But one way the church is contributing towards these children is through education. I know of a priest who has over the years been giving scholarships to some of these children who were soldiers, and some of them have finished high school, and some of them are moving on to learn, things so that they can contribute more positively in society. So in different ways, the church is contributing. Education is one area that the church has been able to help these child soldiers to move in, because we open our schools and we did not discriminate. We're aware of their past, but yet we try to bring them in so that we can help them move on.
What is the role now? I mean, the church played an extraordinary role immediately after the Civil War in helping to rebuild the society. What is the relationship now between the present government? I know that the President Ellen Sirleaf spoke very highly of the Archbishop of Monrovia, Archbishop Francis, and called him the conscience of the nation. How is it today, and does the government look to the church for help in reconstruction of the society? And if so, what role does the church play in this reconstruction of society?
Yes, the president, as you mentioned, in her inaugural address in 2006, called Archbishop Francis the conscience of the nation, which is very much true, because he played a pivotal role in advocating for peace, the respect for the dignity of the human person, and his message actually, got across to many people in Liberia. And through our Justice and Peace Commission, the church contributed very positively towards peace in Liberia. So it was an acknowledgement of the work of this man, and of course the church at large. Yes, today there is constructive engagement between the church and the state. Yes, the president has a lot of respect for the church, and likewise the church is, sees herself as a partner in progress with the government, especially in the area of health, education, or in the provision of other social services. Yes, and just in May, the Archbishop of Monrovia and myself had a meeting with the president along with some of our staff to discuss some very pertinent, important issues, how the church and the state can collaborate, because we see that it's not just the state alone, but we see it as part of our mission, to contribute towards the development and advancement of the country. So, and we want to see how we and the government can work together. So we had a very good dialogue. It's the beginning, and that dialogue will be ongoing.
But there's a long road ahead.
Yeah, definitely.
Your Excellency, if you had an appeal for those who are with us today on this program, for your needs, the needs of the church, what would that appeal be?
Now, we need to revitalize our pastoral and social programs in Liberia. I will emphasize the pastoral and the spiritual is very important. Infrastructures, they can be built, but the people, to invest in the people. Yeah, because I feel that if we invest in our pastoral and spiritual programs, we can contribute toward the development of the human person, towards peace and development in Liberia. Because reconciliation is something very deep and spiritual. I must emphasize that. Yeah. So to revitalize our pastoral and spiritual program. So that's one area. Also, the rebuilding of our infrastructure will be another level.
The churches, the seminaries.
The seminaries, the chapels, the convents, and other social institutions. Also, the economy in Liberia is going through challenging times, though there have been improvements, but the world economy is impacting, and the church in Liberia is very much dependent. Now, we have to work towards self-sufficiency. Now, how can we be supported in our process of becoming self-sufficient? Because we cannot turn forever to church in need, and of course to other dioceses in the world forever. We need to grow and mature. So, as I say, it's good to give someone, something, but it's good to teach the person how to earn it. Right now, they look up to us. Okay, Bishop, you have to speak on this issue. Father, you have to speak on this issue. But also, they too, they have a voice. They are the ones who are affected first, often. Okay, but we take up the challenge, to speak on their behalf. But I would love to see them standing alongside us, or even, coming before us to speak.
It's a big program, but you're optimistic.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. It's a long road, but I think if we work hard, we can get there.
Your Excellency, thank you for having been with us today in our program.
Thank you, Mark.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today on our program, Where God Weeps. And if you'd like to know more about the situation of Catholics in Liberia, or some of the projects of His Excellency Bishop Andrew Karnley for the peace, for the reconciliation, for the reconstruction of the country, I would encourage you to look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.